Alrighty, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. I should count, but I think she's going to count for me. I appreciate you being here. I know it's the end of a busy few days, and I do think I have some valuable information to share, and I do hope you get something out of it. If you don't, please let me know. I'll change my presentation for the next time. But if nothing else, I hope it creates some good conversation between yourselves or your customers or your suppliers. So let's just get going. My name is Martine Padilla. And, you know, I know when I go to sessions and I kind of wonder, okay, how did this person get up on stage, and a little bit about their path. And just so you know, I've been in printing for over 30 years. I'm probably a lot like you guys, where I started out as a designer, and then as pre-press supervisor. And then I was a bindery supervisor, and then I ended up running a vice president of a printing company. Got into where I was a print buyer at an advertising agency. And so I have bought printing, I've sold printing, I've designed printing for over 30 years. So you can definitely call me a printing enthusiast. I love this industry. It's given me a wonderful life. And so I am just trying to make sure it is sustainable into the future. So today I hope to, light a little spark with you to become a printing enthusiast, maybe more than you are today, and do it through sustainably driven practices. And then you can see I'm president of Sufisio. We're printing strategists. So let me define that a little bit. I actually wear several hats today. As a Sufisio basically was created to go out and share our story with our success with some of our clients and show them how to buy printing better. I also currently am the authorized print director at Toyota. So we actually procure printing for Lexus, Toyota, and Scion. I actually take on some other consulting opportunities where right now I'm in the middle of a project with a very, very large retailer working on a visual merchandising sustainability study to help move them into the future with better sustainability practices around their print procurement. So like everybody today, we're all wearing multiple hats, right? I mean, you got to get it, if you got to get it done, you got to do it yourself. If you want it done right, you embrace others around you who have similar thinking, and you just get it done. So Sufisio is actually a business unit of Callahan Creek, which is a marketing advertising agency. And through the years, we've worked with brand clients like this and have bought all their printing or showed them how to buy printing. And so with all that experience, almost all of it's been retail environment, so whether it's POP, whether it's outdoor media, whether it's collateral, that experience has given us the opportunity to create Sufisio, where we feel like we are subject matter experts in printing, and we can go out and show the story with other brands. So Sufisio's mission is really to work with major corporations who choose to produce printed materials in a sustainably responsible and cost-effective manner. When I go out to talk to brands about how they can buy printing better, every time I'm going to talk about sustainability because I believe it is the corporate brand's civic and corporate responsibility to be leaders of sustainability. So just by show of hands, I'd call myself a printing enthusiast. I call myself a print buyer. I love the title of printing strategist because I think that says that I am going to make sure that printing is strategically procured. Who in here are the guys that are getting the work done, operating equipment, operating pre-press, and designing? Who are the front end and the manufacturing? If you raise your hands, or anybody here? Okay. And what about operation owners? Okay. And how about supplier media partners? Okay. So obviously we're a diverse group, and I truly believe in each of our own roles, we have the opportunity to be leaders in sustainability. But you got to understand it first. And so I just want to make sure that you get some inspiration
In the
from
decades
this.
ahead, a dramatically different world will begin to take shape. Powerful forces have already begun contributing to this transformation. The growing global economy, increased reliance on technology, and a higher demand for energy. But perhaps more than any others, two trends we've already begun to see will shape our world. First, billions of people are lifting themselves out of poverty and joining the middle class. With this progress comes a desire to enjoy the comforts and conveniences of modern life. Second, those of us already in the middle class and beyond have begun to develop higher expectations of the products we buy. We will continue to care about cost and quality. The coming years will see an even greater demand for products that come to us efficiently, ethically, and sustainably. How will businesses win in this future? We will need to alter the ways we take natural resources from the earth and make the products we sell. We will need to refine how we move those products and ourselves around the world. We will need to rethink how we buy and use those products, and ultimately how we reuse them. Making these changes will require a total transformation of business as we know it. We need to look at our businesses more holistically and ask questions about everything necessary to make them productive. How do we run our businesses more efficiently using energy sources that don't pollute our air, water, and soil? How do we eliminate the concept of waste from our processes and begin to reuse the resources we've thrown away for so long? How do we make products that are not only recyclable, but more durable, and that can be used multiple times and in multiple ways? The solutions to these many challenges represent opportunities for innovation, ingenuity, and partnership on a scale unprecedented in human history. They're opportunities to do the right thing, not only for the planet, but for the billions of people who call it home. They're opportunities for small and large businesses to prosper and grow. Businesses can not only succeed in the future, they can lead the way. Some have already begun.
That's a video that was produced by Walmart, and you know, I've looked at it for a year and a half probably, and I still get inspired by it, just knowing that, and after actually working with Walmart, understanding that they really do care about how their business impacts the earth, impacts people, and want to do what's right. But what I'm found out talking to many brands is, you know, I know printing upside down and backwards, and when you start talking to people at brands, they just don't know what they don't know about printing. In fact, I'm going to show you a slide in a minute that kind of illustrates that. And so I think it's our job as printing enthusiasts who wants this industry to grow is not only be aware of what we're manufacturing and what our capabilities are, but really get your head around, if you're going to talk to a brand and you walk in and you mention the word printing, I would guess a large percentage of them don't even really know what you're talking about. I'm finding that more and more often you mention the word print and they really are thinking about their desktop printer. So again, you're going to have to put on that hat in a very broad sense of helping educate what printing is. And nobody can do it better than us that love this industry. And again, you know, only you guys are the ones that are going to have to go out and you're having to sell printing. I think a big part of your role really is about education too. So before we get started, the other thing I find out is everybody has different definitions for sustainability. So I just want to see if we're all on the same page here. So we're going to define sustainability in a minute. But first, I want to define print. So again, if you're, you know, if you have an indigo or a couple indigos, or if you have offset equipment, whatever it may be, you may be really focused on what you know in a print category. So I find that I have to explain to brands what printing is. So this is just a little snapshot of helping educate them on where printing lies within their industry. Most of the big brands, probably have their own silos, their own budgets, their own P&Ls in different areas. Sometimes they don't even talk. Lots of times printing is obviously buried within marketing budgets or other operational costs. So I think it's really important to, for you guys, to think very broadly when you think about print, help grow the industry, how reinforce the industry, and when you talk printing, sure, you're going to talk about what you can do, but I think it's healthy for the industry for you to really talk about printing in general and help educate the people in this digital world what printing is, because it is confusing, and the younger they are, the less they really understand. Okay, so now define sustainability. Do I want to do that? Okay, let me go back here one more. So from a corporate positioning, companies like Walmart that are, top 100, Fortune 100 companies, and they have a footprint across the globe, they really are going to think big picture about how they define their sustainability initiatives. And they're going to identify these big picture world challenges like this. So, we're talking about sustainability, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, okay, we're talking about recycled paper. No, we're talking big picture sustainability. So about poverty and hunger, population growth, and resource management. And when you have those kind of challenges, how do we become sustainable in the future based on those challenges of today? So defining sustainability, I think most people have probably heard of the 3 pillars or the 3 Ps, or there's 3 Es. And generically, it's profit, people, and planet. Over time, just going to different conferences and talking to other sustainability folks, I personally really like the word prosperity. If you would lump everything together, that's what we're really trying to do, is create a sustainable future for our kids, for our grandkids. And it's all about prosperity. Whether it's in your business, whether it's in your personal life, it's about prosperity. But that's just me. So for today's conversation and most conversations, it's going to go something like this. It's still a 3-pronged approach. I think it's still the acceptable conversation: physical, social, and environmental. So again, whether it's people or planet or profits, this is the conversation we're going to have today. So if you look at those categories, different companies are going to have different priorities. And some of it may be because of what they're manufacturing. If you're manufacturing automobiles, you may really want to have a positive impact around emissions. Their goals are going to be different. They may take on something generic like reduce and reuse and recycle because that's common language and everybody's comfortable with that. They may really get into a deep dive of how they are impacting the environment, and they're going to choose more granular objectives. Natural resource usage, energy reduction, greenhouse gas reduction, maybe a goal zero waste. Maybe they're wasting a lot in what they do and they want to impact, have a reverse impact by water use reduction or zero waste, or because it includes, it's just not about environment, it's about physical, it's about social, it's about labor practices. And sometimes they'll go as deep as life cycle analysis, understanding everything that's going on in their supply chain. And of course, there's been a lot of conversation about that. And it's a huge undertaking, but obviously is a really good way to measure exactly what you're doing. Or for Walmart this next year, that's their 3 categories are going to be, to work towards 100% renewable energy, to create zero waste, and to sell products that sustain people and the environment. So you can see how those do tie in to key sustainability goals. And what I'm going to do today is, if you acknowledge that the brands, that all this stuff is important to them, and if you are a printer, I'm going to try to show you why you really need to have sustainable practices to help you build a relationship with the brands. And most of the time, they aren't even going to know that they need a relationship with you unless you teach them why they do. So why are they, why are they looking for this? Well, these are some examples over the last few years that I've personally been involved with. And when a company is hoping to get work towards fiscal successes. These are some of the things we've been able to impact. Through different print procurement practices, so this is all printing related, we were able to save our $27 million by buying printing differently, reducing the spend by 30%, and I know most printers are like, well, why are you taking away my business? But it's, again, doing it smart. It's working on, you know, the big picture, not the small picture. Identified ongoing cost avoidance, which consistently is, actually it's probably even a little higher than 20%. And then really getting into understanding the business and helping them do inventory forecasting. So it's really doing a deep dive into the business practices to be able to affect these kind of changes. So through printing, we've been able to demonstrate this kind of success. And then there's social successes. So again, the three-prong approach, where you're creating conversation, and it's the awareness. Just for the printers or print buyers to be able to engage, you know, the marketing departments and within other silos, and for them to be the subject matter experts on printing and sustainability. And the satisfaction, you know, that sustainability initiative, it's having a positive impact over everybody that's involved. And what, you know, I know personally, and I have a lot of associates where once you understand sustainability and you really get your head around it and you really understand how you can communicate with brands, you become a leader. And then the people that you are talking to become a leader, and whoever they're sharing the information about sustainability also become a leader. Because it's yes, we've been talking sustainability for years, but I really do think now's the time we're really starting to get into the granular information about how we can really, how we can do it. And I'm going to show you a video shortly about Adidas and what they're doing. Environmental successes, you know, again, on a corporate level, you know, just having conversations around understanding the paper that you're buying and, you know, the difference between post-consumer and pre-consumer waste. And, you know, sometimes it could be that virgin papers are the way to go, but it's understanding and sharing the knowledge of what you know and giving somebody the tools and information to make good decisions and hopefully sustainability-driven decisions. You know, one thing that at Toyota we took some flack for was the industry, and I don't know, does anybody in here have touch points in the automotive industry as far as printing? They've been doing this for 20 years to where the way that they were actually printing the press forms, they wanted to make sure if they had any facing pages that it actually print on the same side of the press sheet. So you can imagine, no making smart sense of signatures or anything else, amazing amount of waste and make-readies. You talk about turning a big ship very slowly, but we successfully did that, and literally that is part of the $27.5 million savings was just, again, educating and asking questions, and just because it's been done one way for 20 years, let's do what makes sense. And one thing I feel, you know, very strongly about, and I mentioned this earlier, is when you're talking to brands about sustainability, one thing you really have to help, I think, convince them a little bit is that, especially if they're a larger brand and they can be an influencer of some of the smaller brands, you know, I tell them, I do believe it's their civic responsibility to help be a leader in sustainability. And if you explain why and how they can, you know, if they're going to buy and say they're going to specify digital printing because it's got a better footprint, or if they're going to specify a paper that maybe hasn't had a big impact in the market because it's been expensive, but now they can order large volumes and make that paper available for smaller printers, I think they have the responsibility to help move sustainability for not only their brand, but for their smaller brands, and not only for their printers, but for other printers. And actually, they buy into that pretty easily, but you're the one that has to help tell the story. So what can you do today? Hello. Come on in. So some of this is going to feel a little bit like Sales 101, but I kind of consider myself an old-timer in the printing industry, and You know, I work with a lot of print buyers and a lot of print salespeople, and I don't make any assumptions anymore about Sales 101, because I know probably like how you guys feel. It's really hard to find good salespeople that get it, right? So I apologize in advance if this feels a little Sales 101, but I believe in everything that's up here, and I think it's worth sharing. So how do you earn a sustainable partnership with big brands? And don't laugh at some of this. I'm going to go through and explain some of it in a minute, but these are the points I'm going to touch on, is to know who you are and embrace it, define your sustainability positioning, identify the right client for you, understand the company that you're working with. It seems like a no-brainer, right? Build a transparent partnership and add value. So I'm going to touch base on all 6 of these points, and I do believe they equate to a successful, sustainable partnership. So step 1, know who you are and embrace it. So I'm an old school print buyer, right? I used to love dots. I was one of those people that fight the digital world a little bit, because I want to get my loop out and I want to look at dots, and I know what a rosette is, and that's what I want to see. Of course, I had to change pretty quickly. But what I find is that there's a lot of printers out there, and I'm going to call them printers, and I don't care if you're grand format, I don't care if you're strictly indigo, which I kind of call that level image presses, or I don't care if you're doing, you know, duplicator work. You're a printer. I think it's pretty frustrating for buyers who are trying to understand a printer's capability, and now how everybody's saying they're a solution provider. You're a printer. So people that buy print, I think you need to decide who you are. Yes, I know you need to offer solutions. I know. I mean, we talked about this last night, Doris. I mean, printers need to be able to go in and sell solutions. But at the end, you're a printer. So define who you are. Define what your core business is. When I first went out to Toyota several years ago and evaluated the way they were buying printing, we did a granular analysis of thousands of projects over 1 year. And I literally would go through, going through the list, and I would look at these projects, and I'm like, there's no way that should cost that much. And another one, you've got to be kidding me, they've been paying that much for that? So I literally would call up those printers and say, hey, let's talk about that job you've been doing for the last 5 years at a unit cost of, you know, $4. And, you know, they had not been doing what was right for the client. And it's because they were trying to be a solution provider, but they didn't know when to walk away from the project and do what was right for the client. So yes, be a solution provider, but I would highly recommend you're transparent in what you're doing. Yes, you may need to work with a partner. Yes, you may have a contingency plan if you're too busy and you've got a partner that you're outsourcing work to. But I would suggest that you're always being clear with that relationship. That if you're outsourcing something, I think you should be transparent with that. The more that brands are getting into understanding life cycle, supply chain, you don't want them to be surprised one of these days when they are assuming you're doing all the work and they understand your facility and your organization, and then to find out you're using somebody else who may not be quite as good as you are. Buyers don't like surprises. So just define your core business. Some companies, depending on size, some have a mission statement, some have a vision, some don't. I would recommend that you have a mission statement and that you live it and that you share it. It should be something that you're sharing with people. Because again, you're building a relationship. And then live what you say you do. You know, I'm one of those buyers that I would rarely do work with somebody that I haven't visited their facility. And really, it's out of protection for my client, right? I want to make sure it's the right partner. And so, just make sure whatever you're saying you're doing. I had one printer. I'm all about best practices and think printers should be leaders in best practices. And I believe in G7 protocol. How many people have G7 protocol that they're following? So those of you that do it, you understand the value it can bring to your organization, right? So, and then there's certain processes around that. And those of you that don't know G7, it's color management. So Google it, do it. But when I go into a printer and I go to a pressman and I ask questions of, so how is G7 working for you guys? Are you seeing the results? Or, is it a great tool for you as a pressman? And when you get that deer in the headlight look, like they kind of know what I'm talking about, it's not a good thing. So live what you say you do. And if you aren't doing it, don't say that you do it. So know who you are, embrace it. It's okay, just be transparent. Define your sustainability positioning. As more and more brands are looking at their entire supply chain, leading towards life cycle analysis of any product, as a printer, I think you do need a sustainability positioning. And the other thing is, you probably already have it, and you may just not have it on paper. Because if we know it's about fiscal responsibility, you've got a P&L, if you've got good HR practices, you've got your social aspects, you're doing it, you may not have it documented. And, when it comes to sustainability, I would hope that most people are doing, they kind of treat their shop like their house, and they take care of waste, and they're aware, and they know that plastic water bottles may not be as good as, having people wash their own coffee mug. But, so you probably already have sustainability positioning, but I think you need to make sure it's documented. So along that path, to set objectives for your sustainability positioning, and I changed up, I added emotional here. There's a lot of, I've got one of my clients at Toyota, when I started talking about sustainability, he was like, oh my God, I've got a tree hugger. No, but sustainability can be emotional, and it's okay for it to be emotional. I have a new 6-month-old grandbaby who's just as adorable as can be. And sustainability and believing in it is emotional. I want to make sure that, we are protecting our planet and our people and all of our practices. So it's okay for it to be, so some of your objectives to be emotional. And obviously they need to be fiscal and environmental. I think you need to understand, whether you choose to recognize or not, but you need to understand and recognize industry and NGO endorsed guidelines and certifications. And the reason is because they bring credibility and third-party verification to your efforts. So some people are like, oh, certifications, really, it just costs money. If you want to work with big brands, they're going to trust you because you're going to have a relationship and they're going to believe what you say. But their boss and the sustainability director and people that are into scientific facts or people that really want to equate and have metrics, you really do need certification of some kind about all the statements you're making. I don't know if anybody follows, but over here the last couple of months, the Federal Trade Commission that came out with new green marketing guidelines. And there's very specific language you can use and shouldn't use and should use around any kind of sustainability and green statements. Actually, another thing I would just recommend you maybe Google it and kind of read through it. It's actually very interesting. It has to do with, whether it's claims on packaging or claims on product, but you should really kind of think about that when you're making any kind of claims about who you are. So I'm sure most of you are aware of Greenie. I'm just going to list a few. So Greenie is one that basically, if you're buying energy credits from recyclable energy, that's one way it can be verified through there. Many of you are aware of just the FSCs, SFIs, PEFCs, and we all know that I mean, I think we're finding out more and more, most people don't even know what these mean when they see it someplace, but we know it has to do with best practices around forestry or supply chain of forestry products. And the one I want to focus on a little bit today is one that some people are aware of and some people aren't, and I think it's important because the Sustainable Green Printing Partnership is the only certification that definitely is third-party verified criteria. Working with a client here over the last couple weeks, and we're really identifying the way that they're buying all their printing and making sure it's the most sustainable way possible. You know, it's pretty easy to go through paper and figure out attributes of paper and how we can measure the best practices or the environmental performance indicators around paper. Gets a little bit tougher when you start talking about plastics and other substrates like that. But, you know, there's some measurables there and metrics there. But when it comes to printing operations, I think there's a lot of assumptions that, you know, if somebody is in business in the U.S., they're probably regulated by the municipal or county or state or the federal government on how they're operating. I can tell you that's not always the case. I think there's some people that, good faith, believe they are, but until you actually go through a checklist and metrics around verification of all your processes, it can be very enlightening, and I think I just want to tell you some more about it because I think it's real important. So setting in LA a few years ago and trying to make sure that Toyota was being leaders and buying the best way they could, realized that there was nothing that defined a green printer. I mean, I was getting phone calls from people like Lithocraft and other companies out there that were, you know, companies coming in and saying, you should buy from me because I'm a green printer. And I'm like, really? Great. What does that mean? And there was no definition of what a green printer is. You know, there's somebody that's called this, their name is a green printer. That's their name. And they use FSC paper. So I literally started writing the criteria and metrics around what defines a green printer. I have a breadth of experience. I've been so lucky where I have had all touch points between Flexo and screen printing and web and offset and labels and POP. And I'm like, I can do this. And I'm like, I don't have any more hours left in the day, but I can do this. And then it was like, okay, this is crazy. I can't do it. I need help, and I cannot believe I can Google and Google all day long, and nothing is showing up on metrics for what defines a green printing company. So back in 2008, I actually was asked to be part. I called Printing Industries of America. I think, is anybody here a PIA member? And how many are SGIA? Okay, let me do that again. PIA, SGIA, anybody FTA, Flexo? Okay. So in case I forget to say something when we come to the end of SGP, those associations can help you if you choose to do SGP. They'll actually support you very heavily to do that. So in 2008, some of those printing associations got together because they were having people say, how can I define myself as a green printer? Well, then I called PIA because that was my primary world, and I said, we got to define how to be a green printer. So there was a stakeholder group that got together in 2008. It was printing associations and stakeholders, some, you know, other print buyers of some large companies. You know, at that point we had, you know, Kimberly-Clark and we have DuPont. HP was actually one of the original, you know, patrons that were involved because everybody was going to ask that question, what's a green printer? You know, we've been talking substrates a little bit, but what's a green printer? So it was incorporated in 2008. The first companies were certified in 2008, and it does include all print platforms, including bindery and finishing, if you know, in that category of the world. It is a whole facility certification. So it's not just what you're buying or your supply chain. It really is about the product, the process, and the envelope. There's even metrics in there that talk about educating on, let's say design aspects of it, to make sure that you're being conscientious the way that something's designed, to make sure you aren't wasting a bunch of paper. If you could make this piece an 1/8 inch smaller or a 1/2 inch smaller, and you could use a smaller sheet size. It's about awareness of things like that. The processes of how you're producing things, it's the inks, the substrates, and it's about even the envelope, which is from landscaping outside to the practices of your own employees. So you can see where, if you go back to the definition of sustainability, and we're talking fiscal, and we're talking social, and we're talking environmental, and SGP hits those key points. So you see how it's tying in with what the brands want to hear and how you align yourself with the brand. You may have to help talk their language, but you'll have the tools to do that. SGP went out this last year and did a poll to brand print buyers, all sizes of print buyers, but very much larger print buyers. And this is why I continue to do these speeches, even though it's not my most favorite thing in the world to do, is this maybe column. So print buyers are saying, yes, I like that SGP thing. I've never heard of it. But if somebody would tell me more about it, I would probably do it. I would specify it. And so that's why I continue to talk to printers, talk to brands, and make sure that you guys know you need each other, and sometimes you don't know you need each other. So to me, to know that 86% of the people that were polled would do it, would specify it, it's important to them, but most of them don't know about it. And it's because we don't have enough printers that know about it.
Adidas North America supports advertising, product development, communication for own retail, meaning for our own stores, inline, Sport Performance Originals, and also our outlet channel. Adidas globally have very strict sustainable practices when it comes to anything from footwear production, apparel, graphic design. I oversee own retail. We do mostly retail windows and in-store communication to support the window message. Adidas North America has a preferred print vendor pool for large format, so all of those vendors have been required to go through the SGP certifications. What I see SGP bring into the industry is, as a print buyer, it gives you a sense of relief knowing that the print vendor have been validated for their sustainable practices through a process, and that helps you to understand in which bucket of sustainability that they live, because I think there's a lot of companies out there that say they're green and sustainable, but it's hard to pinpoint exactly where and how.
So SGP becomes a tool for those brands to be able to quantify, verify your green practices. And just to share with you recent activity that's going on, and I mean, take note of this. I mean, if you have any clients up here, you definitely should be taking note. So Starbucks wanted a greener supply chain, and now they are going to start preferencing SGP printers. They're using 2 right now. The Food Lion Group obviously is starting to integrate SGP into their procurement business model. Great conversations going on with PepsiCo and the packaging department. SGP does cross over into in-plant operations also. Hasbro is one of the in-plant printers that has SGP certification now. Kraft Foods is using SG printers. Some of the marketing companies that are, basically have some large brands are endorsing it. They aren't mandating it yet. and then Group 360 worldwide. So the conversations are happening, but I can tell you one of the first responses is, well, there's not enough SGP printers. They don't want their hands tied by specifying it because there's not a big enough pool out there. SGP does go through a third-party audit, and again, that's what's going to be important for the large brands because they want to trust you, but they can't just go by your word because somebody else is going to ask them, how do you know that? So SGP does have a third-party audit that verifies the facility is in compliance, again, with all the things that you'd think would be regulated, and about an SMS system, that you've implemented best management practices, and that you're tracking environmental performance metrics, and you're committed to continuous improvement. That's one thing I really like about SGP is that not only does it give you the metrics to be able to become aware of how to measure and what's important, it also has basically you have to come up and you have to disclose what your continuous improvement projects are going to be. So it's a way to kind of keep you going down the path of continuous improvement. These are just some of the metrics, and you know, again, it's stuff that you guys deal with every day. You may just not be capturing it in a way that can be, you know, identified as a true metric and that can be, you know, verified. It's not rocket scientists, but you know, it's a lot of data. There's no doubt. Currently, it's in the U.S., Canada, and most recently in Australia. We do have interest in other countries as well. We have only 43 facilities that are certified right now, but most recently the GPO is now an SGP printer, and they are going to be pushing down. And I don't know, do any of you guys do work with the GPO or any of you outsource suppliers? They're going to, most likely, are going to be pushing down that their supply chain needs to be SGP certified also. So just a heads up on that. Right now, today, we have 16 that are going through the process to get certified. And we're finding that's about 96% recertification rate over the last few years. And so the biggest question for all of you is going to be how much does it cost, what's the investment, but more so, you know, why, you know, what's the ROI for? And how long does it take? Let me address that stuff a little bit. So it depends where you are in this path. If you already have your act together, you're already kind of measuring these metrics, you know, you might be able to get through the process and the auditing pretty quick. If you have a lot of corrective actions that need to happen around it, it's going to take longer. For some people, it's a process, it's a path. For other people, they have their act together and they're ready to go. And I think the quickest anybody got certified is like a couple months. So the ROI, these are just some examples, but I think they're pretty impressive. And again, you can see we're capturing the categories that are important from the brand. So if somebody's talking about waste, these are a direct correlation to those goals. I mean, to divert 2.3 tons, divert 78 tons, and to divert 106 tons that was going to the landfills, now going to recycling, and they're capturing $28,000 in recycling. And again, just awareness. Reduction of water usage. Again, so it's just learning, getting exposure to new information, getting exposure and help on how to measure it. And energy use, you know, to reduce the kilowatt hours by that and to see a $25,000 savings in just because of better practices. 60% reduction in lighting costs, 53% reduction in lighting costs. I mean, the SGP printers that are out there, they're seeing these kind of results. And a lot of people, you know, aren't quite where they want to start measuring greenhouse gases, but, you know, we have one printer that's, you know, reducing it by 2.4 tons. And then just solvent, recycling solvent. Again, just like I was talking about Cells 101 earlier and how some of it seems so common sense, and just to be able to recycle solvent differently and save $16,000. Sometimes you just need a little bit of help to get where you need to get. So that's enough of the little SGP spiel for me. I think it's very important. You can go to this website. I actually have some business cards here from our past executive director if you want to pick those up and you can talk to her. I will be available afterwards, as well as I think we actually have an SGP printer in the audience down there and a patron. And so if anybody wants to talk to them afterwards, we'd be glad to facilitate those conversations. So getting back to becoming a sustainable partner. That was a lot about environment, but that's a hot button with these brands right now. So everything that you're doing, I suggest that you get on the bandwagon and you really will set yourself apart as a leader. And I need to talk a little bit faster. So step 3, of course, I'm going to stop a minute. We've got translators back there, so they probably don't like the idea that I say I need to talk faster. So are they waving? Okay. All right, so identify the right client for you. Again, I know everybody's grasping for business today, but you know, you got to have fun in this industry. And so, you know, what is important to you? Again, what's your mission statement? What are your objectives? What are your goals? Find the partner that fits you. What's important to you should be important to them and vice versa. I mean, you should have fun. I recommend that, and I know in the agency world when we're, you know, trying to find new clients also, you know, so for instance, we had Mark from Taylor Golf, right? So if you're a golf enthusiast, wouldn't you love to have Taylor Golf as a client? You know, figure out what's fun and what's important for you and go after those clients. You have stuff to talk about. You have things to build a relationship on. Make sure it's the right client. Don't be miserable and, you know, take on a client that, you know, you just don't get along. I mean, life's too short for that. And identify what the buyer needs from you. And I'm going to acknowledge that the print buying community today is probably very, very frustrating for all of you. You know, it used to be the print buyers used to be pretty good print buyers and they knew their stuff. Well, as digital has increased and as technology has broadened, printers have gone out of business, and then we throw in sustainability, and then there's budget cuts. You have people buying printing that have no idea what you're talking about, right? And you have printers, you have buyers who might be like myself, where I would need something different from you than the person who doesn't know what they're talking about. And then there may be that middle category person, that buyer who, you know, maybe they were a designer and they've been thrown into the print buying role. They didn't really know that's what they were going to be doing, but they kind of like it. They kind of get it. They're going to need something else from you. And so many times I see salespeople that just talk. They talk to one buyer and the next buyer and the next buyer like they all have the same title, so I'll talk to them the same way. I think you really have to understand that print buyer and how to talk to them. An experienced buyer may just need more personal delivery. They may actually need proofs delivered to their home because they're juggling so much, or somebody else may need you to teach them printing 101 and sit in the press shop with you for a week so you can teach them about printing. So identify what your buyer needs from you. Understand the company. Again, make sure that your vision and missions are aligning together. Identify their corporate initiatives and their priorities, because that's when you can talk the talk the language. And then understand your buyer's individual objectives. It's okay. I mean, you want to go to that buyer and you say, how do you get measured for success? How do you get your pay increases? Let me help you get there. And they're going to say, oh, we went to the sustainability meeting and they want us to try to reduce waste. Or, you know, they want us to not go on many press checks and they want to cut down travel expenses. Ask them what their objectives are. Help them. Because your goal every single day should be to make your client a hero within their own company. I mean, if you keep that in perspective, everything will be good. And, you know, I've got clients, I mean, I truly consider that's my job every day, is to make them look good. And again, this is one that seems so commonsensical, but as a buyer, it should be clear who the role of the salesperson, and that they're empowered to make decisions. And if leadership, as you as owners, if you're unable to give that kind of trust to your salesperson, you either need to get a new salesperson or you need to fire yourself. because if a buyer needs confidence that that person is where the buck stops, that every decision, every time you need help, you don't need to go get, somebody else to answer a question. You need to empower, and that's new. I think that's part of today's, wearing multiple caps and being assertive and getting the job done. And executive leadership should only engage to demonstrate appreciation and interest in the business, not crisis management. And again, if you don't have the salespeople that can deal with crisis management, if you're the one always having to deal with that, I don't think you have the right salespeople. Now, leadership, this is what I don't think enough do today, is I think you need an annual face-to-face meeting with every client. I think you need to talk about that salesperson. I think that should be immeasurable. Are they working for you? Do I need to change them out? What do you like about them? What do you not like about them? And at least do that once a year, face-to-face, not just a phone call. And then ongoing appreciation. And I think that came up, in one of the keynotes even, is like, it was Gary who was saying that he had a customer service line that would call clients when they bought a bottle of wine and say, thank you for your order. And it's the same thing. I don't think clients, even because we're all so busy, just have a printer even to call me up once a quarter and say, hey, you know what, I know you're slammed busy, but thank you for your business. It does not happen enough. And build a transparent relationship. Brands want, again, as they're looking more and more at life cycle, they need transparency. You can't have any secrets. The last thing the client wants is any kind of surprises. Make sure they understand your sustainability goals. They're going to want to know more about you from a risk management perspective. If you are producing an OEM type project with them, if you are an important part of their supply chain, they need to really understand how you impact their business. And so the more transparent you are, the better you'll be. Sensitive for some people, but the larger companies you work with, if you have to work with a procurement person, which everybody hates, they're bean counters, right? But it's their job. And if they come and you just feel like they're saying, okay, I need a better price, right? So when you go back to them and say, listen, I would love to get a better price, but let me show you my books. Let's, come over, spend an hour at the shop, and let me show you what it takes to produce this job. Brands want their good supply partners to be in business in 2 years. And if they're going to be screwing you down on price all the time, that's not healthy for your company, and they don't want that. But you need to communicate. You need to educate. So if you can come in and say, you know what, I can't reduce it down by $10,000, but I can reduce it down to $9,300, and let me show you why. So transparency, I think, is becoming, in everything around supply chain, it's a necessity. So the more you share, the more they'll share. If you want to talk about forecasting and what's the potential for your business. I can tell you at Toyota, one of the things we did is we sat down and went from, it's embarrassing, but if we went down from 69 printers to 7 the first year. But we took those 7 in a room and say, here's the pie. You 7 have access to this pie, this dollar amount. And so you start having a transparent conversation. You know how to forecast. You know what's coming down the pike, and we're making a commitment that we're going to have that kind of partnership. So the more you share, the more they'll share. And this came up over some keynotes too. Today it's okay to be friends. We kind of went through the cycle there where, I'm a buyer and, I got to kind of keep my distance. And I do on a professional basis, but it's okay to be friends. But I recommend that you lead the relationship by understanding what the rules are. So for instance, some of those companies, they have people coming and going, and they may not even know what their own policies are. So get online, look at the HR policies. Can you give them a gift? It'll probably say, and what the dollar amount is. Should they be going to lunch with you or not? It'll probably say. Do your homework. And I think then, again, you have an educational opportunity in a totally different direction to educate your buyer that, hey, you know what, I read your policy and I can't give you that Christmas gift I want to. I want to, but I can't. So just, it's conversation. It's, again, you're becoming a leader. Always add value. Again, a no-brainer. Do not take orders. Buyers don't want you to take orders. That's just not the mode buyers on. They want to be educated. Educate, educate, educate. I mean, it's not about selling your equipment. It's not about selling direct mail. It's not about selling digital. It's about selling and educating the printing and all the capabilities that are out there, how it melds together with all the social aspects we're doing. So it's all about educating. One of my favorite things is, especially with dealing with procurement people, is really making them understand that every printing job is unique. And we know it is. A lot of procurement and print buyers just think it's widgets. They may be buying toilet paper. They might be buying other commodities, and they don't see that you can't do the same math. So again, educate. Bring them to the facility. Walk them through. Show them how every project's different. Just make sure they understand that printing is not widgets. And specification, rationalization, which I don't know why I keep saying it because it's hard to say, but it really is, even if you get a very experienced buyer, is to look at the specs and push back if they don't make sense from a sustainability viewpoint. If it could be reduced down 1/4 of an inch, or if the page count could be changed, or the weight could be changed, don't take the order without doing specification rationalization. And I think your goal should be position yourself as their personal subject matter expert in printing. Again, not in your printing company, not in your equipment, but if they have a printing question, and they're going to understand now what printing is because you've told them, if they have a printing question that they're going to come to you, that you are their personal SME. So lead. I mean, so many times printers are taking orders and they're following and they're just doing what their client says to do. Now, today, more than any other time, is your opportunity to lead. So do it. And then share your successes. That's one thing that printers don't do enough. You know, tell about yourself. And of course, we talk about social media a lot. You know, brag on what you're doing, even the little things. I mean, if you get new equipment, tell people about it. Tell your clients about it. A lot of people don't even do that because it says a lot. It says that you're making a commitment to the future, that you're viable, that you're a leader in the industry. If you come to D-Scoop, every one of your clients should know you've been to D-Scoop and tell them why. A lot of people just don't brag on themselves and let people know the investment that you're making in the industry. And that's in real time. I mean, that's one thing that, you know, when you participate in something like this, your knowledge isn't 6 years old or 3 years old. And you kind of forget you're here. You have very, very current knowledge. People need to know that. So just to recap, I do believe that if you can follow these steps, that you have the opportunity to become a partner with brands that is driven by sustainable practices and to position yourself and your client as a leader in the industry. So lead and celebrate. Just a laugh. Okay, I just like that. I just thought it was kind of fun. So that's it. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, I know we've gone, I think, a little long. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Any open questions for anybody I want to share with the group? Yeah. Can you get my slides? I think D-Scoop is actually recording this session. Yeah. And I think they're recording it too, so I'm not exactly sure. Yeah. And again, I think I've got one more slide up here I was going to suggest. So my email is here, the website is here. I'm on LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be glad to communicate. I do postings on there that's sustainability relevant information. I'm on Twitter, not as active as I should be after the last few days. You know, kind of feel like I got scolded about that. But so yeah, please reach out to me. Again, I'd love to partner with you in any way, help you through the sustainability path. So any other questions? And if anybody wants to talk about SGP or anything specific, come on up and hang around and I'll be glad to talk to you. Thank you very much. Safe travels home. Thank you.